The Bills have made a sneaky good signing. While headlines have been filled with draft picks and big name free agents, the Bills' low key roster move could end up meaning more in the future. They signed a wide receiver who's bounced around the league to different teams and at the same time let go of a young rookie prospect. It may be a minor move, but it could end up shaking the offense up and add to the wide receiver depth. My name is Maeve Miller, and I'm a part of the Bills Digest team, so please subscribe to our Bills Digest YouTube channel for all the latest updates. So first, I want to talk about who this wide receiver is, which is Christian Wilkerson. Wilkerson is 28 years old, and he originally attended Southeast Missouri University, where he had a very impressive career. He had over 3,500 yards and 33 touchdowns, which ended up setting records. However, he was undrafted in 2020 until the Titans signed him. He ended up going to their training camp and doing stuff in the summer, but he was eventually waived before the season started. Then in 2020, the Patriots picked him up, and he kind of alternated between being a practice player and playing in a couple snaps. And when you look at his stats, they're not super impressive. You can see he only played in a couple games, a few receptions. He had some touchdowns and a couple yards, but it's not anything too crazy. After the Patriots, notably with the Patriots, he did have a standout moment where he had 4 catches. He had 2 touchdowns in the span of 4 catches, which I think was something that did make him stand out and just kind of showed that he is a threat in this red zone when presented with the opportunity. Obviously, he didn't have as many snaps or as many games played. He did have an injury in 2020, which caused for him to be cut from the Patriots. 2023, the Raiders picked him up, and like the stats show, he just played in a couple games with them until he's ultimately released again, and the Bills picked him up in May. And from his limited snap experience and his college experience, you could see that he does have really good hands. He's a bigger guy. He's 6'1" and over 200 pounds. And he's just a very good route runner. And when he's in the red zone, you can see that he does make things happen. But some disadvantages are that even though he couldn't really stick with a roster, he's been in the league for a couple years. And, the Raiders, Patriots, Titans, nothing really stuck. And maybe the Bills, this could be it for him. So I think that's exciting to see. But the Bills definitely made some couple moves with the wide receivers. They were focused on the defense more, but there were still things happening with the offense, and there's definitely been more players being brought in, which is why that brings me to the next point about the Bills waiving their young rookie, which is Hal Presley. And Presley is out of Baylor. Similar to Wilkerson, he was undrafted until the Bills picked him up. At Baylor, he didn't have as much of an impressive career as Wilkerson or other players. He had 81 catches with over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. And he's definitely a productive, effective player, but he didn't have as flashy of a career or as much of a star. And this could add to maybe why he was waived, because in the mini camp, he might not have stood out against other players, other veterans, other rookies. And they do have a lot of wide receivers that are on the roster right now. And they could have just seen some more value from someone like Wilkerson, who even though didn't play in many snaps, he does have more NFL experience and also has special teams experience. It's also not uncommon for a team to sign a rookie and waive him after he attends camp. They like camp bodies, players that can go against the starters, and you can kind of feel out their talent. And maybe it didn't work out, his talent, skill, maybe personality. We don't really know for sure. But I think when you have someone like him versus Wilkerson, the decision seems clear to go for Wilkerson when he has more of that experience. Even though other times maybe the rookie would be better, we don't know for sure. But my next topic I want to talk about is that current wide receiver room. So as of right now, the starters were Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, and Curtis Samuel, who are 3 players that I love, especially Shakir. He had a huge contract extension, which I think was a great move, because that's a player that I want on the team for the next couple of years. Shakir, something I like about him is when he's in the slot, Allen can find him very easily, and he's kind of like a shifty little guy. He seems very small out there because he can get around guys, and I like that he doesn't just stop. He catches the ball and doesn't just run out of bounds. He has one of the most yards after the catch, which I really admire about him. And Coleman also coming off a rookie year, he put up some good numbers in certain games. Obviously, there are certain games where he didn't play as much or play as well, but I think him and Samuel definitely pulled their weight. Also in this offseason, they signed Joshua Palmer, and there's also talks about Diggs possibly being signed. Obviously, that didn't happen. I think that was a good move, but it was kind of interesting to see what happens with the offense. Another player they signed was Elijah Moore, who was out of the Cleveland Browns. And in the last 2 seasons with the Browns, he had a good career. He had 51 catches and then 61 catches with over 500 yards in both those seasons. And like this tweet said, he'll most likely be competing for the third wide receiver spot, which could be someone like, be going against someone like Samuel or Josh Palmer. They also have players like Tyrell Shavers and Wilkerson, who they just added. So I think the camp and preseason is going to be a lot of competition, which I think is a very strong thing. There's going to be some challenges with having so many players. But yeah, I like to see them fight for spots, and it doesn't matter who was drafted when. We've seen the Bills have players like Christian Benford, who was drafted much farther after someone like Elam, who was a first-round draft pick, and Benford ended up playing much better and now is one of their best players on the defense and had a huge contract extension. So I think that's what I like about the Bills is that they're very versatile. They don't have like a star one wide receiver. With Diggs, they kind of did, but I think Allen is so like strong at going to different players, whether it's a wide receiver like Shakir or tight ends Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, even like running backs James Cook, especially Ty Johnson. Allen's been known to go to them on third down plays or receiving plays. So that's what I like about the Bills offense is that they just are very diverse in who they go to. And I think that's the reason why maybe Diggs didn't spend as much time with the Bills because maybe he wanted more of the catches, but that's just not the kind of team we are. And I think with this offseason, they're going to have to be outperforming each other, especially Wilkerson, if he wants that playing time, have to show that he is a valuable asset and maybe having that special teams experience for someone wanting to be the fifth or sixth wide receiver. That's very important. So I'm curious to see what happens with that. But as I was like looking into things, I scrolled on Twitter and just kind of wanted to see what the public was saying about the different wide receivers and someone like Wilkerson. And I came across a podcast that Brandon Beane, the general manager, came on last month where he was talking about just some of the backlash that he's gotten over the wide receivers. So he said, to see because he was extremely frustrated when it came to this. And I'm just like not used to seeing that as much. And he was talking to his podcast guys and just saying like the goal was the defense. He went on to say like we wanted to make defensive changes and that was the primarily goal in this offseason. And they obviously did make some still offensive moves. And I think that is something that the Bills get some like hate for, but it ends up, like you said, working out well. They score more points than anyone, than the Eagles and the Chiefs. And it's been working well, not just going to some one guy. And he also talked about how the guys on the podcast were so mad in 2018 when the Bills chose Josh Allen over Josh Rosen. And look what happened. We have the MVP, and we're still trying to go to that Super Bowl. So I think I support beating these decisions that you don't always need the star player like Stephon Diggs or Justin Jefferson or someone like that. You can have smaller guys that just make a big impact. Like someone like Shakir, they're just making great moves, and we still have tight ends and running backs that they don't just fit one role. They can play multiple things. And that's what I'm hoping for Wilkerson when he comes in. Hopefully he might end up being a practice player. He might end up being wide receiver 5 or 6. So I'm curious to see what you guys think. Will he make the 53-man roster? Only time will tell with the summer, but I'm curious what you guys think about when it comes to wide receivers. I like what they've been doing, and I think focusing on the defense is a very smart move. And we'll definitely see what happens with preseason, but as of right now, I'm excited to see what players like Wilkerson can do. Thanks for watching, and go Bills.